Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to Alt HR The Shift. I'm Marnie Robbins with my lovely co-host Mindy Honkoop, and today we're diving into a conversation that feels especially relevant right now because no matter where you sit in an organization, AI is no longer a future conversation. It's a right now conversation. And somewhere in the middle of that right now are people managers, business leaders, and employees trying to figure out what that actually means for the way that we work, learn, lead, and stay human. And that's why we're super excited for today's guests. Today, joining us are Helena McAleer and Dave Birss, co-founders of the Gen AI Academy. Helena is a marketing and technology leader with deep experience in digital transformation and innovation. She's passionate about helping people use generative AI in practical ways to work smarter, think bigger, and prepare for the future of work. And Dave is the author, educator, and leading expert on creativity and generative AI. He's the best-selling author of How to Get to Great Ideas, has taught more than 100,000 learners on LinkedIn Learning, and now helps organizations around the world unlock the potential of AI through his work at the Gen AI Academy. We're excited for this conversation because AI seems to create two very different reactions right now: excitement about what's possible and anxiety about what may be lost, or maybe a mixture of all of that. Who knows? Helena, Dave, you spend your days helping people navigate both. So we're really excited to dig in today. Welcome to The Shift.
Thank you.
I need to up Dave's bio. He's now at 2 million people he's taught on LinkedIn.
Ooh.
A little bit of an upgrade.
Thank you for that update. Yeah, so amazing. The way we like to start this episode is really around just how on earth did you get here? Where you are today, a little bit about your recent storyline. And I know you come at it from a couple different angles, Helena having her side of the coin and Davey having your side of the coin. I wonder if someone can kind of tell us about how you came to Gen AI Academy and got to where you are today.
Helena, go ahead.
Okay. So I come from one of those squiggly careers that I think it's called nowadays. And then so it's really funny. I look back at the Gen AI Academy now, and there's a little part of every role that I ever did in what we do. So I kind of feel like everything brought me to here. But anyway, I diverse. The Academy came about. I started talking to Dave. We've known each other for years, since my early careers. He was always at the company, and then I would get in the company, he'd leave and go to another company, and I'd sort of sidestep him. But we always knew each other and we always talked. And then after I'd moved to France and I'd had my baby and I had my time off, I was getting back into the career world, which was very stressful with a very sick 1-year-old. And I messaged Dave and we started working together. And he was like, we were kind of like, finally, all these years, we finally have an opportunity to work together. And then after about a year, the cogs started turning and we were like, we've got to do more. We've got to do more things. Like, there's just such an opportunity with AI right now. And I came up with the idea of starting the AI Academy, where Dave could teach courses, but I also could tap into my network of AI experts to teach courses as well and bring it all together to make the Gen AI Academy. So it started at, we'll just do courses and then workshops and then consulting and then a little bit of this and then a little bit of that. So it's sort of gone. So there's my consulting side of my career, my innovation side of my career with the AI, and there's just a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, but
And
all of
obviously
these
Dave.
things, you kind of start off with an idea of what you think it's going to be like, how it's going to work. And it just doesn't end up being like that at all. So we were working on the Academy for about a year before we launched. So we've been working on it for 2 years because last week was our 1-year anniversary for the company. Thank you. And where it is now is different from where it was when we launched. And I think that's just the great thing about starting up a business, is that you have to be adaptable, and that's part of the excitement and the enjoyment of doing it. It all changes.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's good. The first year, like, we've relaunched the website and everything to it be for our first birthday. So like it's not completely different. It's just reorganized. And I think from a new business perspective, having a first year to do that, I now understand why people say launch with an MVP, not an end product, because it all just changes. So like I think it's where it's meant to be now, and has changed and it has diversified and it has moved. But I think that's a good first year, and it's a good place to be. I think.
Yeah, and that's so exciting because I think that's also like what's happening in workplaces. Like even with places that haven't started, like unfortunately, they need to be nimble and be able to adapt and be agile in that nature. And yet, the very place of the ecosystem of work is often keeping them from being able to do that. Do you often see that with individuals you're working with?
all the time. Yeah. We go into organizations and to do stuff. And if you think about the way the organizations work in terms of their lifespan, where Helena and I are at is in this lovely innovation phase, where we are changing and we're willing to change and try new things out and see what happens. And it's great to be in that phase. Then you start to get into a phase where you're looking to create systems and processes and start nailing things down for more predictability. And then when you get to large organizations, you get to optimization. So when you look at that optimization phase, which is what most large organizations are at, innovation is poison within an optimized organization because innovation is all about change. It's all about being open, but optimization is about getting rid of anything that's unpredictable. These two things do not mix. So it's natural when we're working with larger organizations to see that kind of tension within the organization. But Helena is the one that ends up speaking to a lot of these people initially. So I think she sort of sees a lot of this firsthand in our conversations.
I think a lot of like organizations are struggling at the minute not they're not struggling, but just it's kind of like, okay, we've got AI, now what? And like they're doing the training, they're doing everything right, they're ticking all the boxes. There's a lot of learning development teams like putting the right things, having the right conversations, giving them the right training. And then it's like, we're calling it the stall phase. Like they get to do this. They're just like, how do we actually embed this, make this happen and get it to that next level? And I think that's where a lot of, there's a lot of organizations that haven't even started AI, but for the ones that are further on and have developed it, we're calling it the stall phase. So there's like a snail and then a cycle. And then they get to this point and they're like, what do we do now? And I think a lot of the bigger organizations are at that phase. And it's sort of like, I wouldn't call it innovation or anything like that. It's just like iteration, maybe is the right word. It's just, how do we get that to the next level and get AI actually embedded and stop needing to train people and start needing to it just be part of the organization, and then to be able to get that cycle to keep going and going and going and going. So iterate, keep recycling again and change again. And we're seeing ways of doing that and embedding that now, which we're sort of starting to roll out and starting to talk about that sort of level of organizational process, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
I think people are getting disheartened by AI, if that makes any sense. Because it's because of that, right? Well, we're doing everything we're told to do. What are we supposed to do now?
Yeah, and I think people are listening to what the AI leaders are saying, and they're believing it. And we have to understand there's an agenda behind all of this stuff. And when these organizations are saying that this is all about productivity, that is a fantastic sales message for anyone in the C-suite. For them to think, oh, I just buy this in, I just put some money into the machine, and at the bottom I get savings out of that. Oh, phenomenal. And it doesn't work like that. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is that organizations have been damaging themselves in the way that they've been trying to implement AI in a way that they think that it's going to be immediate productivity savings. They think that they're able to replace a human effort with AI tools. And what we've seen is just only 6% of organizations are seeing a measurable ROI. 6%. It's unbelievable. So one of our experts, Carrie Sullivan, she's the one who sort of talks about this sort of stall phase, which is what happens is you can get 10 to 20% of your organization on board with AI, and they'll be using it and they'll be getting some kind of results from it, but it stalls there. Psychological. When it kind of like maps as something that sits on top of the usual adoption curve that you see. So you get your pioneers, your early adopters, your mid adopters, your late adopters, your laggards. So there's different psychological profiles for people along that journey. So we're finding that the 10 to 20% are the people who are the pioneers and the early adopters, who are ones who are interested in just doing new stuff, trying stuff out, trying to better themselves, trying to grow themselves, being willing to experiment, being comfortable going to places that are uncomfortable. But the 80 to 90%, these are people who want to see processes, they want to see systems, they want things to be proven, they want a playbook. And that's where we're struggling, not us as an organization. There's only like 4 or 5 of us at the academy. So it's not really not quite the same with us. It means that there's only one of us doing anything, and the rest of us struggling. No, we're all okay. But in larger organizations, that we're finding that we're seeing it with our clients. I'm hearing it from people in conversations, from business leaders that I speak to, and Carrie was the one that proved it with stats for us. So it's one of the things that we're sort of looking at the moment is how can we help these companies who are starting to see that stall? How can we help them get over that hump to try and get the rest of the 80% on board? Because I know that some organizations are just on the edge of going, stuff it, it's not worth it. We just can't get folk on board with it. We're not making the money. The whole thing might just be a red herring. There are some companies who have got that attitude.
What I'm hearing too is almost like two different or several different personas, right? You talk about the early adopters and the innovators, and selfishly I think of myself of like, yes, I want to get the new toy and play with it and learn and explore and share it with others. But when we get to as you put it, the optimization stage or that maturity level of, well, how do we clear the noise from what we've been exploring and learning and measure and iterate? It's almost, I see a handoff type issue or maybe a team collaboration type issue. So from a human perspective, like as far as the actions, like if you're talking to HR folk, I'm wondering, where do you see the most effective action at that stall moment, as far as like the human actions at those moments?
Yeah, I mean, it goes beyond training. If we look at this, it's quite holistic. So you need leadership. And really, how many organizations have got really strong leadership these days? I've got lots of opinions on that one. And I don't think we're seeing strong enough leadership, because you're saying we've got a handoff issue. And I think one of the handoff issues is that a lot of the people in the C-suite, the CEOs, the CEO, are looking at this and going, "What's a tech problem? Let's hand it to the CTO." And when you do that, when you look at what the priorities are of a CTO, and I've done this exercise, I've mapped it out, so using like a radar chart, and you look at the priorities of different people on the board, and you map the CTO's priorities against the HR person's priorities, and they are just vastly different. You see peaks in entirely different areas. And I don't know if HR people are completely naturally have the complete skills to lead this, but I think they're a more important leader in this than the CTOs. I actually think it's pretty blinking easy to pick an AI model. We have a handful of them. We have a few of them, and most CTOs are going, well, we're on Microsoft Suite, so we'll just use Copilot. And it's just like, no, you've completely missed the point. And we've seen this. There's something. In fact, Helena, you wrote something last year about the Copilot thing with the British government, didn't you?
Oh, I just talked about that. I didn't write that in public at all. Oh, no, I did actually. Yes. There was just a massive fail, basically, and they had like hardly any adoption. But I think Copilot are slowly admitting it to themselves as well, that it's not the best. But Microsoft is forced on government here. There's no choice. That's not like they have a choice to take Claude or anything. It's forced on them because they're all on Microsoft, and that's it. It's the same for so many organizations. And what does that mean? That they have to be left behind because they don't have the right tools or don't have access to the right tools? So it's going to create sort of like a monopoly in some sort of way, where it's like, oh, they can afford the better tool, which means they're going to be a better organization. And I don't know if I could kind of like it like that way, or maybe Microsoft will come and pull something out of the bag next week and be like, hey, this is amazing. And we'll be like, okay, now that's amazing. But also that's difficult to manage as well. You can't keep on top of the tools and swap around to which one's best. I wrote about that as well. But going back to the CTO and the HR thing is, I've been on calls where the CTO is like, no, everybody's using AI. They're all really great. And the HR person's like, no, they're not. They're definitely not. And he's like, and I'm like, really? And then he's just like, no, I'm absolutely sure. We'll get all the data and we'll do everything, but I'm absolutely sure everybody's nailing AI and they're all really good. So this is just more of just to come in and have a chat with everybody and do it. And I think he was literally in shock by the time it was finished. And the HR lady was like, yeah, I told you so. I was like, so I think you guys are much more important. I actually think you are more inclined to look at the L&D data and who's using what and what they're trying to grasp. And you're the ones that are going to go see who the pioneers are and see who's are doing really good work and really cool stuff. And when you were talking about what do they do at that stall phase, it's freeing up those AI pioneers to pioneer more. So it's using what they're basically, we get to the stall phase. We analyze all of the data that you have access to. So all the tools that you're using, what the leadership look like, as in how are they using AI? How do they see it in the organization? Train them up on how to highlight those early adopters, how to find the early adopters, how to highlight them, look at the data, who's actually using AI and what they're using it for, find natural use cases, find per department, and really break down the data and go, well, this is what you've got. I want to start using their own LMS platforms. I don't want to come in and start selling like loads of different trainings. It's like, what do you have access to already? If you've got LinkedIn Learning, I'll map out what's got access to LinkedIn Learning and go take Dave's courses. Like, that's a no-brainer. Like, I don't say that this is the best course because it's ours. I say this is the best course because that's what you need. And if there's gaps, that's where I want to fill in with us. But I don't want to come in and be like, you have to do all of these things, because everybody's got loads of access to loads of information, and that's not going to make people learn. There's other things that are going to make people learn, like we're going to build the playbooks for each department, say these are your AI pioneers, these are what they're doing, have the pioneers train the people that are below them, and then they're like, right, cool, and we've done that and everybody's up to speed and they're all at the same level, and they can go off and do other stuff and redo the same cycle. And that's the repeating the cycle thing. Go back in and say, like, Marnie, you can go and do more cool stuff because everybody else is doing what you're already doing, and then you get to do more.
There's like so much richness when everyone's saying too, like Helena, what you just said in such a short amount, like you could unpack that probably for hours. I think there's like levels of really meeting people where they're at. Like you said, we're building the playbooks, not that they're built. Like with each organization, we're coming in and understanding what is their current state, meeting them where they're at, being able to understand, okay, where are the personas in this organization? And by department, there isn't just a one size fits all. It's about really that holistic like understanding, but then understanding where are these unique people, the humans in our organization within this holistic place. I often have seen personally too with these stalls is because there's a lack of a common language. You may have like your early adopters, but we don't know who they are. And then we have those that are lagging, but they're afraid to say that they're lagging, or they don't know the language to use to bring people together to have. And there's a lot of individual effort that's occurring, but there's this lack of holistic conversation about, okay, individually I may be doing great, but what does that mean for the team? Which I think then ties back to Dave, what you're saying earlier when you talked about productivity and the activities that we're doing, but how is that tying to greater holistic organizational outcomes and speaking to the outcomes, even as a team that we're all looking to? Because if we're thinking about it and building success measures based on productivity and usage, that's often at the individual level too, and reinforcing the individual level. And we've lost sight of what does that mean for us holistically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's another issue that we have with I mean, I don't want to be pointing the fingers. It sounds as if I'm trying to bash the CTOs, and I'm really not, because a lot of them are doing a really good job, I've got to say. You know what it's like if when somebody is given a task by the C-suite and they have to report back, they're going to cherry pick the figures that make them look good, because this is something that marks their career. It's the whole thing that happens if you give people metrics and it's all about numbers. People game the numbers, they game the metrics. And there are a lot of boards who have handed over the responsibility to somebody who's on the technical side, and the numbers that they're bringing back are ones to try and impress the board, which are not actually the right numbers, or they're not realistic, or there certainly doesn't involve any of the softer kind of measurements and how people are feeling about this, how uncomfortable they are, how it's affecting their motivation, how it's impacting truly. Productivity isn't just about how much work you do and how much time. There's the quality aspect of it. So how is it actually denting the quality aspect? What is it doing for their own judgment? Because there's things that we know that people at all levels, when they start using AI tools in the wrong way, when they're not trained properly, their judgment gets impacted. So the people who are junior don't develop judgment. And the people who are senior, when they start going to their computer and going, so ChatGPT, just seen this thing, what do you think of it? When they start outsourcing their judgment, they screw with their own brain. They actually start to second guess themselves and they start to lose confidence in their own judgment. And then their judgment skills start to crumble because judgment requires a certain amount of confidence. And this is happening. Research is showing that this is happening. So these are the things that are far more important for the future of an organization than trying to say this is how many licenses we've got, this is how many prompts went through last month. But we don't know how to measure that stuff right now.
But we've already
And for
seen how
most
that goes
organizations,
wrong.
these metrics are utterly meaningless.
But we've always seen that the gamification of it, that goes wrong because Amazon or whoever it was pulled it and said we can't do that anymore because people were just using up their tokens for the sake of it and just like doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. So I mean, like you give people a problem, they're going to find a way around it. It's like the IKEA is the only good example I've seen so far, and it's like they reskilled 8,500 call center people because they replaced them with AI, and now they made 1.3 billion euros on the retraining skills that they gave those other people. Like that's a good example of how to put the human first. You're not there to the bottom line. You're there to go, right, we've got all these people who know everything there is possible to know about IKEA because they're our call center people. What can we do with them? And they retrained them. I had to look it up. Sorry. They retrained them into remote interior design consultants. And that's what they did. And they made an extra 1.3 billion in sales. And like, that's a good example of how you retrain your people and you get them that keep that knowledge inside. I'm very focused on anybody who talks about losing or firing whatever half their staff or whatever. You've lost that knowledge. You've lost that company knowledge and you are not getting that back. It will take you years to get that back. You can't automate the human brain as much as anybody would like it to. There's knowledge in there that people won't even know that they know, so they can't automate it. Like they've been there for 20 years. There's just stuff they know and they will be able to answer any problem. But your AI is not going to be able to do that. And if you get rid of that workforce, that knowledge is gone and it's not coming back.
I also know Dave's book on friction, like when he was talking about cognitive friction, like, and the learning involved in that. And as we start to, we can't also, I think some of the AI stuff is starting to create frictionless, but like it can't be 100% free of friction. Like
He talks
then
about
he talks about that a lot. And I think each of us is, I think if in all this conversation is about the human, I think we lose, if it's just a chief technology officer speaking with X people, they often are talking about technology and process and how we're getting in, and they completely forget about the human element that we're also like talking about here. And that's sort of the chief people officer. If they have the right level of capability, can really speak into with confidence, ask the questions. Like they don't have to know the answers. I think a lot of time I find that they don't speak up because they feel like they have to have the answers. So they're not asking the questions, which is like when I come in, like this is years ago when we did agile transformations, I would force myself into the conversations and start asking questions. Like I didn't have all the answers. I wasn't even like agile practitioner yet. But I had some big change management questions.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone else had the question, but didn't feel brave enough to ask it because they didn't have the answer and they didn't feel safe at the executive level to ask something they didn't know the answer to. And so that is also what I'm seeing here is a lot of people in uncertainty, not wanting to speak into that or ask the big questions, to be uncertain. But to learn, you need to have the friction of uncertainty to then be able to hypothesize, to then think about what is that next step? What's that next test to prove, like the signal.
How do the C-suite learn though? Do they
Right.
put their hands up and say to their team, I don't have the answers, which is very unlikely to happen?
No, that's
Or
really
do they,
unlikely to
like,
happen. Which
Do
is
they go
where,
and sit and do courses or on-demand courses? That's even more difficult because they don't have any time because they're C-suite and they're
Right.
busy multitasking. But at the
Yeah.
same time, everybody looks up to them and goes, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? So there's this huge demand on the C-suite to
Yes.
have all the answers and they don't.
Yes. And they don't. And you have to be okay not, and asking some powerful questions and giving them a framework to be uncertain in. Like, let's think about, okay, what is that next step? So that's where I found, like, when I was coming as a chief people officer with a question, then being able to frame it as like, what do we know? What is it that we at least know enough? Like, what is our hypothesis? Let's brainstorm around a hypothesis. Like, what is it that we need to know in order to feel comfortable taking that next step? And so kind of reframing it in that way often would help build the language to be able to think about, okay, well, we are all uncertain, but what is it that we need to learn in order to be able to be confident in being able to take that next step? To like, what is it that we believe if we do this will give us the more information to feel more confident, more capable?
Do you even think that the C-suite or executive level or whatever would have executive level training? Would they even be able to admit to people on their own level that they don't know? I don't even think that's possible in
How do
many
you
cases.
approach that? Like, do you feel
One-to-one
like,
mentorship,
yeah,
Yeah, coaching too.
coaching. Yeah. I mean,
Coaching, like
yeah,
having a third party coach. I mean, that's where I would build like strong key stakeholder relationships with the executive team where it felt safe and trusted that I'm not just going back to the CEO or the board to talk about them, but being able to like one off, be able to build that trust with each of them with the shared common interest in mind. But that would really help me to be able to know where can I push and pull and be able to enter into a conversation to create ownership around shared common pain, but also shared common like knowledge in order to go towards a conversation that didn't get people to be defensive, but be able to like brainstorm into the uncertainty.
so we talk about empowering, Mindy, you said really well, to make discerning decisions and whatnot. What are we learning? What are we iterating on? I have coaching clients who actually really struggle with that. If they're the type of personality that says, I want my leader just to tell me what they want me to do, I'll go do it. I will bang that drum. And that's really hard in this day and time when we're not quite sure what that is. Even at the executive level, what you were saying, Helena, is that how do we get that narrative between the executive leader and the person who says, I just want to do my job well and whatnot. And a lot of times with my coaching clients, I have to have, or the one in particular I'm thinking about, is give them permission to say, we messed up on this. This is what I learned, and this is how we're going to move forward. But it's constantly giving that person permission to do that or reminding them. And so from an executive leader standpoint, just like you were saying, coaching, mentoring, all of that is constantly giving permission to, as long as we're communicative and we're learning and we're having that space to say, yep, that was friction, that was a mess up, this is how we're moving forward. I think it's more important now than ever.
It's quite tough when in business leaders are taught that they have to be strong and that they're not willing to look fallible in any way. And for some of them, that if they're in an organization that is on, say, the stock exchange, then that's one of these things that's actually quite important for them to try and look as if you're strong and commanding in some way, and not that you've got any weakness that you're going to be picked apart at an investor meeting. And then on the other side of things, when you look at the people who are employees within organizations, we're finding that, well, you just have to look at, we have been on a roboticization of humans journey for a considerable amount of time. So I remember a job that I had it was around about 1990. It was the worst job I'd ever had. And I'd worked on farms mucking out stables. I knew what bad jobs were. This was the worst. My heart used to sink. I was on the complaints line for a satellite TV company. And what would happen is on a Saturday, I'd be on the complaints line and people would phone up and I'd answer the phone. And for somebody who's actually, would you believe it, I'm quite introverted. I don't like speaking to people I don't know in that kind of way. I get, I'm not comfortable with that. So people would be phoning in and they would be raging because they'd be wanting to watch the soccer and their satellite TV wasn't working. And I'd be like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? I didn't have this technology. I didn't have satellite TVs. I had a folder. So I would go to the folder. It was like a choose your own adventure game. And I'd be going, right, okay, so what appears to be the problem? Well, the screen's blue and it's just not doing anything. And I basically looked down, okay, blue screen, turn to page 17. Basically, I was employed not to use my brain. I was a flesh cog. That's all I was. And it's the same in a lot of organizations, particularly where there's a lack of trust within organizations. So many organizations have got trust issues. And when you've got this, that people are, they're just expected to do, not to think. And there's two ways that I've upset Helena, she's off. There's two ways that we add value within an organization. There's thinking and there's doing. And the problem is that most organizations have actually discouraged thinking and they reward doing. And thinking is the bit that truly adds value to an organization. So when all we're left is people who are just doing, not thinking, and then we've got AI, which, because this command and control approach from the top of an organization down, it's kind of, it sucks because people are expected to be told what to do, and they're not expected to think because they're just expected to do more. You know, even the organizations that aren't that way, they're just trying to get people to do things faster because they think that AI is about doing things faster. You know, you've got the brain that hasn't changed in 40,000 years. It operates at the same clock speed with the same memory capacity, the same processing power. And I'll put it back in later on. The problem is that the human brain hasn't got faster, but technology is able to process stuff faster. So organizations think that humans can do things faster. But we've got this trade-off that as soon as you do that, you basically discourage thinking, and it all becomes about doing, and you've crippled your organization when it comes to flexibility, when it comes to human intelligence, when it comes to all the brilliant stuff that helps organizations stand out. And AI is only amplifying that for a lot of those organizations. So if you've got that crappy attitude, AI multiplies it.
I want to say that this is like so beautiful because it was reminding me of our conversation leading into our today. Is where you talked about your book Friction, or Frictionless. I can't remember the name of that book, but I need to get that book because
I'll pull it up to check. There we go. There's Friction. Yeah.
yes, because this is like, I love talking about friction because, and I hadn't, but I love how you're now talking about thinking and doing and how we've moved so much to doing, which once again is about process and the roboticizing of people, like, and forgetting the humanity of our thinking and who we are and how we get work done and the humanity in that. And if we're just focused on doing, then the friction is a problem. And we're not actually getting curious because we don't have the trust to lean in with curiosity and have a dialogue to understand what are the underlying emotions that are resulting in maybe some of the resistance or that may be resulting in friction, and how if we lean into that friction with dialogue and curiosity, how we can then harness it to then become a positive catalytic converter for the right change that we need in the organization. Yet what's not happening is that dialogue. So the friction is maintains and becomes then the heat that creates the very fires that then start to destroy it in so many ways. Now, I know I'm generalizing this a lot, but friction is so important because, yes, we do want to maintain, because friction is important and can create the very change that we need, but it's not comfortable. And we need to understand who we are in that and all the things that you talked about with the different personas of humans and how we think and how are we built to be and to have the trust to be able to do that. But how leaders, you even mentioned, aren't capable today of being able to even have these type of dialogues and be curious and to lean in.
Yeah. There's one of my favorite books on this kind of thing is Drive by Dan Pink. Drive, The
Yeah.
Surprising Truth of What Motivates Us. And he talks about 3 different elements. He talks about autonomy, the feeling of control over what you do; mastery, the feeling that you're getting better than you were last week; and purpose, you're doing it for a reason. It feeds your soul in some way. And these require purpose. So these require effort, and friction. So autonomy means that actually you're taking a certain amount of risk on yourself. You're not just following a process, which means that you can't get blamed. If you've got autonomy, you've got some kind of control. And if you screw up, it's your backside that's on the line. When it comes to mastery, that requires friction because you're going to have to learn stuff. And there's kind of like, there's 3 steps of learning that I kind of like talk about when I'm teaching this again. So in here is the first stage you've got is your hippocampus in here, and your hippocampus is constantly dripping neural material. And when you're learning a new skill, or you're sort of learning you're learning maps and a place to go, then it all happens down here in the hippocampus. The next stage is when we keep learning that new skill, we keep developing it, we start to create neural connections between different parts of the brain, and we create neural network. And then the third stage is the more you do it, you myelinize it. And that's like putting the plastic round a wire, and it makes that neural circuit faster, it makes it more efficient. So when we do that, that's really important. That takes friction. And that's what embedding a skill is getting it to the myelinization stage. So it's like muscle memory, is relatively automated. It's a sort of high functioning skill. That takes a lot of friction to get there.
Yeah, and
But
which
the way
requires a
that
thinking that we're getting rid of.
And the way that majority of people are using AI, and the way that the leaders are expecting AI to be used, is to do things faster. So you're bypassing that effort. And that's basically what innovation is about. It's about bypassing effort. But when we do that, we are making ourselves dumb. There is no two ways about it. The research shows it. We are seeing that there are repercussions to people who are overusing AI in education and in the workplace. And we are destroying that neural wiring, and we are not growing the skills that we really need to. And that's something that we started to sort of offer just the end of last year. And there's a course that I started planning and putting together, which is about human skills in the age of AI, and about all the skills that are vitally important for anyone who's working with AI. None of them are tech skills. They're all the things like strategy, vision, briefing, judgment, giving feedback, persuasion. All of these are really, really important skills. And AI makes them even more important for everyone at every level. But that's the stuff. So we started, quite a few of our clients have been asking for that, because they're starting to see the strength in that.
We've also got Dr. Eric, who does critical thinking. When we launched, we have human skills for leadership, basically, which has got nothing to do with AI. We do a lot of how do you keep the human. We've one is on psychological confidence, and like how do you maintain that sort of psychological security and that psychological strength going into AI, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of fear. So there's a lot more than just learning the tools and learning the tech, and I think that's what people forget. I mean, the ethics side, I think, is massively undervalued as well.
Right.
I think we're probably in the next year or so probably going to meet a massive crash where the organizations are going to find out why ethics are so important, and they will become more valued. So I try to get as many organizations as I can to embed that. But I think the problem is that everybody thinks they're ethical already, and that we were like, we're all ethical, we're all good people. But like, it's just we're talking about something on a completely different level that we've never done before. And I just don't think the realization of how important that is there yet.
Yeah, I think that's where Eric Rice's new book. I haven't just started it, but it talks a lot about ethics. It's Incorruptible: Why Good Companies Go Bad and How Great Companies Stay Great. He this is a huge part of that book. And such an important conversation. Oh my goodness, Marnie, like we have like 5 minutes and I don't even know how to end the conversation. That's so rich.
Well, I think you have a lot of conversations, both of you, with organizations that have overwhelmed HR departments, CTO, et cetera, but specific because our audience is predominantly HR. I mean, this is why we built the Signal framework, is because they have to have a new mindset and way of thinking. You talk about the soft skills and whatnot. But if they're overwhelmed and like, I don't know where to even start, what's that one thing that you would tell them to start focusing on that's iterative and probably actionable within the next month or so?
I would say that analogy of put your oxygen mask on first. Start with yourself and do your own training and like what's right for your role. And then you can start having the conversations and seeing the capabilities of it. So like there's a lot of what AI can do for HR. I mean, there's so many aspects to HR that there is no one size fits all. Like we all know you've got recruitment to talent acquisition, planning for everybody. So there's a lot to go into. So that would be my thing, put your own oxygen mask on first, and then you can sort of see the opportunities that exist within your organization.
I'll give my points by way of a little analogous story. Now, I don't know if you remember, there was an internet story that was quite popular sort of about 15 years ago. It was called the Roomba Poopocalypse. Now, what happened is there was there was a family who had a Roomba, and they had it set up so that 2 a.m, the Roomba would come on, it would clean up all the crumbs under the table, it would do everything, and they would come down for breakfast in the morning. The carpets would be all clean, lovely, every morning, clean carpets when they come down, absolutely fantastic. Until one night when their dog was ill, and it left something on the carpet that the Roomba was not programmed to identify, and it spread dog turd evenly across all carpets downstairs in their house. And that's what they came down to for breakfast that day. They had to change all of the carpets. Now, that is exactly what AI is. If you do not clean up your company's shit before you apply AI, it magnifies it, it amplifies the problem. And so that's the thing, is to understand, where is the shit in your organization? And at that point, you're looking at processes, you're looking at your data, you're looking at your culture, you're looking at the level of motivation you have, you're looking at your attitude towards education. All of these things is basically anything that is just a bit shitty about your company is the stuff that you need to clean up before you properly apply AI.
I so love that. And it's like, what I'm hearing in that is like to do a shit assessment, and that the shit assessment also is like, where are the gaps in our human skills and critical thinking? And as an HR leader, if we need a refresher on what that is, we should be taking these human skills training, not the AI training. If we don't know how to do a shift assessment, a shit assessment to shift to the future of work, we really need to understand then, where are the gaps of these human skills in our organization? Where is the Roomba getting it wrong?
Just saying a deturdification, I think, is what it's.
Yes.
My dogs are in the back here, very excited. They've become a part of the conversation.
It might be time for them. Yeah.
It may be time for them to go
I was
outside.
gonna say, there's too much talk
About poop.
on that note.
So for more gems like this, Dave, Helena, where can people find, follow, purchase, contact you? I want to make sure that we're highlighting. I mean, the reason we came across you, it's Mindy's like, you got to check this company out. So yeah, where can we find you and keep connected?
I'm kind of weird for somebody who works in technology, but I'm kind of very anti-social media. So I just on LinkedIn, I refuse to give Meta any money. So it's LinkedIn, and it is the Gen AI Academy, and it's also the genaiacademy.com.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Dave,
So
any additions for you before we jump?
No, it's the best place to get us. We're both on LinkedIn, and that's really where we do most of our stuff. Yeah, both of us would be incredibly unhappy putting any more money in Zuckerberg's pocket. So yeah, LinkedIn is where we live. But we both get very involved. So if people have got questions, we'll happily answer questions. We love to be challenged. So please come along, say hello, and ask us whatever you want. We'll very happily get involved.
Plus, because we've been talking about it so much, I would love to give all of your followers a free course on Dave's human skills course, so you can get involved in that and see what all the nonsense he was talking about the decertification of organizations. I'm not sure that comes up in the course, but hopefully that will be in there.
Love it. I love it. And I can attest, I've been following you on LinkedIn forever, Dave, and a huge fangirl. And I couldn't believe when I wrote you that you actually wrote backs. And I love that you're just you in your posts. It's not just AI gone crazy. So thank you so much for being a difference maker and being human on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you. We need more of that. There's
Yes, we do.
too much slop.
Yes, 100%. It was such a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'll send you a
Thank
code
you.
for the discount.
Yes,
Speak
that'd
soon.
be
And you'll
great.
see it in the comments
You
below.
bet.
Yes. Yes.